Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we're back with another Pioneer video. And today, we're going to be talking about Budget Dimir Control, the second video that I'm featuring in our Intro to Pioneer series here on the channel. So for those who didn't watch the first video, essentially what we're doing is we're going to be posting some budget decks of decks that are actually good in the metagame. So that way, if you're looking to get into Pioneer, but you don't want, to spend a lot of money or don't have a large budget to be able to spend on Magic cards, then this is definitely going to be the perfect video and video series for you. So today we're talking about Dimir Control. The main inspiration from this deck came from Reed Duke, who recently played Dimir Control at the the Pioneer Regional Championships, and overall did pretty solid. I want to say he went like 10-5 or something like that. So the real main inspiration from this deck was the synergy with Deadly Cover-Up. So I was actually watching coverage when this was going on. So with Deadly Cover-Up, obviously it's a really good board wipe for 5 mana, but you can collect evidence 6. If the evidence was collected, exile a card from an opponent's graveyard, then search their graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them, which is such a strong effect overall, just because being able to get rid of your opponent's best cards in their deck is extremely powerful. For instance, he played against Is It Phoenix, he was able to get rid of, it was the Ledger Shredders and the Treasure Cruises, so his opponent really wasn't able to dig through their deck, and they really didn't have as many win conditions, and overall, they just really couldn't win the game. So I really like that synergy, and I wanted to feature that here today. So part of the cards that really help make Deadly Cover-Up good are Shark Typhoon and Dig Through Time, just because they are really pricey cards, but you don't actually cast them for that. So Shark Typhoon, although you do cast it in the very late game, most of the time you're cycling this just to get a nice shark and then draw a card. So it kind of helps with the Collect Evidence 6. It actually pays for it all by itself. And then Dig Through Time is also really good because it's 8 mana. You're never going to actually pay 8 mana for this card, but it is still 8 mana, so it really helps with the collecting evidence with Deadly Cover-Up. So, alright, let's go and take a look at the rest of the deck here. Obviously, we are Dimir Control after all. So, here's some of our nice counter spells. We're playing 2 Censors, 2 Negates, and 4 Sinister Sabotage. Overall, like all these cards in the list, Sinister Sabotage, which we'll kind of talk about like the budget replacements and swaps and stuff like that later in the video, but essentially this is our replacement for 3 Steps Ahead. But in all honesty, before 3 Steps Ahead, most decks like this played Sinister Sabotage anyway, so it is still a good card, in its own right, and I'm definitely very happy to use that as a nice budget replacement. So next slide here, we have some of our really solid removal. We have 1 Drown in the Loch, 3 Go for the Throat, and 4 Fatal Push. Drown in the Loch obviously is a really good flex card, but just be aware your opponent has to have some really nice cards in the graveyard for this to really work. So that's why we're just playing the 1 copy, because that 1 copy can be very solid overall. And then Go for the Throat and Fatal Push are pretty self-explanatory removal spells, both fantastic in the format. In the next slide here, we have all of our really good draw spells. We have 4 Deduce, 2 Cling to Dust, and 2 Memory Deluge. I know a lot of people are probably wondering why there's only 2 Memory Deluge, and simply put, with this deck, and I'm just going to be honest with you, this is pretty much Reed Duke's list. Obviously, I changed some of the cards for budgetary restrictions, but in his list, he was playing 2 Cling to Dust and 2 Memory Deluge and stuff like that. So I will try to find a video that talks about him with this deck, or of him playing it, and I will try to put that in the description. So if you have any further questions, you can just refer to Reed Duke being a good Magic player and knowing Dimir Control, because I do not personally. Dimir Control is not my personal cup of tea. But anyway, so we got the Memory Deluge there, and this is pretty much the entire deck. But there's one card I really wanted to talk about, and that's Torrential Gearhulk, a one-of spicy copy of Torrential Gearhulk, which I personally love. I've always thought Gearhulk was one of the more underrated cards in the entire Pioneer format. I think this card is super good. Just for 6 mana, being able to cast any instant from your graveyard without paying its mana cost is extremely strong, and you get a 5/6 body on top of that. So definitely huge fan of Torrential Gearhulk in the list as just a spicy one-off to help close out the game. So that's the entire main board. Let's go and hop into our lands real quick, which our land base is going to be a pretty standard budget mana base. So we have the 4 Shipwreck Marsh, 4 Drunk Catacomb, and 4 Restless Reef as our main dual lands in our deck. We're also playing 1 Murky Sewer, 1 Hall of Storm Giants, and 4 Field of Ruin. The Murky Sewer, simply put, I wanted a dual land that had the potential to come in untapped, but that was budget. That's pretty much the only reason why we're actually playing the Murky Sewer. I just wanted to point that out, but I still do like the card overall. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 4 islands and 4 swamps. We want a lot of basics because we are playing Field of Ruin, but also just we are a budget deck, so we don't mind playing more basic lands. And as our spicy basic land of the day, I decided to feature the Dimir Guild Kit lands. I've always been a huge fan of these lands, and I don't know, when I'm playing control, I really like to have my lands be, you know, very, like if I'm playing like a Boros midrange deck, I like them to be very Boros flavorful lands, and it's kind of the same thing with Dimir here. So definitely a huge fan of these lands. So next thing we got to talk about is our sideboard here, which the sideboard is relatively simple. We're going to want some extra counter spells. I believe in my sideboard, I put some negates and I put some mystical disputes. Obviously, depending on your local meta game, feel free to go ahead and switch that up. Hand attack. You're going to want some duresses and or go blanks in the sideboard, just because both of those cards are extremely strong. Extinction Event, Path of Peril. We're going to want some extra removal, you know, extra board wipes. We don't want a million of these effects, but just keep in mind that against aggro, they're going to be super fast, and we need to be able to respond, especially with the Path of Peril just being, you know, a really, really cheap way of clearing up all those extra creatures. So do keep that in mind. And then Chrome Host Seed Shark. I really like this card in the sideboard. It's just like, it's essentially another win condition. You play it on like turn 3, turn 4, you know, next turn, play a counter spell, boom, you get another incubate token. You play a draw, you know, another cheap counter spell, you get another incubate token. It just kind of helps get the game with, we'll get it over with overall. So definitely a huge fan of the Chrome Host Seed Shark in the sideboard. So next thing we have to talk about is the upgrade guide, the cards that we're going to add and the cards that we're going to take out as we go along with, you know, with our budget increasing or being able to pick up more cards for this deck. So in terms of the non-lands, so Dimir Control is very customizable, and like if you think you want to like play more negates or play less negates, that's really up to you. But in terms of what I would personally do, I would add 4 3 steps ahead. The card is super duper good. Go ahead and cut the 4 Sinister Sabotage. Sabotage is really, really good, but 3 steps is just, it's so incredibly strong. So just keep that in mind. You're also going to want to add 2 Shieldred's Edicts and go ahead and cut 2 Go for the Throats. Go for the Throat is really, really good, but part of it is it doesn't hit Planeswalkers. That's one thing. And Shieldred's Edict overall can potentially clear up more answers, even besides Planewalkers, than Go for the Throat can, just because of, you know, it's just a really good card. You're keeping the board clear. There's only one creature anyways. You edict it, and then boom, it's gone. The other thing is, you know, obviously with token and non-token, Shieldred's Edict can kind of take care of that as well. So definitely a huge fan of the Shieldred's Edict. But in terms of the upgrade guide, most of it comes with the lands. Obviously adding 4 Watery Grave, 3 Clearwater Pathway, 3 Gloom Lake Verge, I want to say is what that one's called. It's kind of a new one. 1 Ottawara, 1 Undercity Sewers, and 1 Hive of the Eye Tyrant. Obviously cutting the cards on the right, which are the 4 Drowned Catacomb, the 3 Restless Reef, 3 Shipwreck Marsh, 1 Island, 1 Murky Sewers, and then the 1 Swamp. So overall, in terms of the budget dual lands, Shipwreck Marsh is definitely, I would say, the best, along with the Restless Reef. The Watery Grave is probably the land I would be willing to pick up last. Yes, the shock lands are incredibly strong, but with that becomes the really, really strong price tag. So don't feel like you have to pick up a shock land first or anything like that. Personally, I would prioritize a lot of the other lands, maybe even the utility lands. I know Ottawara is a little pricey, but it's definitely very, very good. I would say focus more on like the pathways and then the Gloom Lake Verges first before you really go into the Watery Graves. Because the thing is with Pioneer is most of the non-land cards are really, really cheap. It's really just your dual lands is what's really going to add up, along with like your utility lands and things like that. So last thing we really got to talk about, we just have the quick wrap up here, which I wanted to mention. The budget list is only $62 US, which is super cheap for a Pioneer deck. And the other thing is too, is, you know, some of my other Pioneer budget lists that I feature here on the channel, typically, you know, I'm making a lot of like cuts that are really, really strong. With this deck, I honestly am really not. Other than 3 steps ahead, most of the other cards in this deck are the exact same as Reed Duke's list that he played at the regional championship. The other thing I want to mention, I know I mentioned this earlier, Dimir Control is very, very customizable. If there's specific cards that you like to play or you think would be better in your local metagame, feel free to change that. Like I'm telling you, Dimir Control is very customizable. If you take 3 or 4 players that are playing Dimir Control in Pioneer, everyone's lists are going to look different. Obviously, you have like your staple cards, you have like your sensors, which most people play. You got your, 5-mana board wipe like Deadly Cover Up. Some people like the Zendikars Royal, or that's not the name of it, but it's like the one that hits creatures and planeswalkers 3 or less. Everybody has like their specific cards they like to play, but then there's like the cards that everyone plays, which the core is generally the same depending on, what style you like to play. And then the last thing, check out Reduke's list. I know he featured a video with an on-channel fireball, which probably will be the one that I leave in the description below if you'd like to check it out. Obviously, Reduke, fantastic Magic player. I was a little surprised when he played Dimir Control at the regional championship, but hey, that must mean that he thinks it has a really, really good angle in the entire metagame. So I don't know, definitely very, very interesting. You should definitely check out his list. And that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, and Zarwanoki. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month. You get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.